Hello everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar. Amdocs Charging, 5G Monetization Gets Supercharged, sponsored by Amdocs. Before we begin, I would like to cover a few housekeeping items. On the left-hand side of your screen is the Q&A. If you have any questions during the webcast, please type your question into the Q&A box and submit your questions to our speakers. All questions will be saved, so if we do not get back to you, we may follow up via email. At the bottom of the audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the yellow help widget. Here you can find answers to common questions. A copy of today's slide deck is available for download in the green resource list widget. Near the end of today's presentation, please take 1 minute to complete the survey that's open on your screen. Your feedback is extremely helpful. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available 1 day after the event and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier today. I would now like to turn the event over to Heavy Reading's Research Director of Cloud and Security, Jim Hodges.
Thanks, operator. Welcome everybody to today's session. So as the operator indicated, today's session is called Amdocs Charging 5G Monetization Gets Supercharged. So my name is Jim Hodges, Research Director, and I'll be moderating today's session. Looking forward to it. And obviously today's webinar is very timely. We're going to be focusing on 5G and the really important role that charging plays in monetizing services. So it's a key topic, something that's going to be of vital importance to service providers now and in the near future as well. So let me first start by introducing today's speaker. We have with us two speakers from today's sponsor, Amdocs. So joining us today and presenting are Stephen O'Loughlin. Stephen is the Vice President of Product Management at Amdocs. Welcome, Stephen. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your role at Amdocs.
Thanks very much. I've actually been with OpenNet, who run the other charging system, and we will talk a little bit about that conversion as we go through it. So I've been with OpenNet for 10 years. Obviously, we joined the Amdocs group there about 2 years ago, but I've been involved in product management for over a decade now, and my role today is I lead up the policy and charging portfolio on the network software side.
Great, thank you.
Over to you.
Also joining us is Nasser Laika. Nasser is the Director of Product Management at Amdocs. Nasser, welcome. Maybe tell us a little bit about your role.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Nasser Laga. I've been with Amdocs since 12 years, mainly dealing with charging products, and lastly, managing Amdocs charging, working closely with Stephen in the PCC portfolio.
Okay, great, thank you. So welcome both. I'm looking forward to your presentations. Okay, so let's talk very quickly. I'll just kind of go through some of these key points. In terms of the agenda, I'll start first by talking a little bit about 5G charging evolution trends. As I said, it's a really important part of 5G services monetization. Obviously, you need to be able to charge for those services. I mean, that part hasn't changed between 2G and 5G, but there's some complexities that have to be dealt with in the 5G era. And then we'll talk about, for the most part of the presentation, we'll talk about the impact of cloud-native driven consolidation. We'll explain all that and what it means, but really we're going to be focusing on how cloud-native services are driving the impact from a charging and consolidation perspective. And then we'll also be providing an overview of the Amdocs charging portfolio. We'll also then wrap up, take questions. We'll have some time left over to do Q&A. So if you have any audience, if you have any questions as the presenters are doing their presentations, please feel free to submit them into the question tool on your platform, on your interface, and we'll get to them at the end. And also we'll be stopping and conducting a poll question to get input from you, the audience, on some of the topics that we're going to be presenting here today. So let's get started. As I said, I wanted to kind of start off with one kind of slide that I think really kind of defines how 5G charging is, evolution trends, and really how 5G charging is different than previous generations. And to me, it kind of breaks down to an architectural level. And there's obviously the 5G standalone core. And there's a lot of new attributes associated with the 5G architecture. We have new core functions, the network exposure function, and the NW-DAF, which kind of standardizes analytics functions. So there's a greater focus on analytics. The NEF is important because obviously the 5G core is a service-based architecture. It's all about exposing APIs, and you need that function. But there's also a single mobile and fixed core. This is something I think sometimes gets overlooked as a key part of 5G architecture. We'll be able to run that core of both mobile and fixed services, which obviously has charging implications. We're also then moving to a cloud-native microservices model in order to support API exposure. There's also what I call an edge core and cloud trust model. So we're moving services to the edge to support ultra-low latency services. But really, it's all about software disaggregation. But you still need to be able to make sure that you're able to get the information you need for security purposes, but also charging purposes. And then obviously, then the key part of that is also software-based slicing, which is something that we'll see, I think, more in the next couple of years for specific applications. And also, I think because we're moving to this distributed model, there's a real need to have a security and a service end-to-end visibility and analytics. And that's going to be key for not only securing services, but also making sure that they're really meeting their latency budgets and making sure that they're able to meet the performance requirements, especially in the slicing environment that the customers are paying for. And I guess the other two parts of this is AI-driven policy enforcement and charging implications. It's clear now that 5G is really, I think, going to drive the adoption of AI because of the speed of the applications, the need to have automated policies and AI-driven policies is a key part of both from a services visibility or services policy perspective, but also from a service enablement as well. And obviously, these also have charging implications. And I'd say also the other consideration is seamless 4G and 5G interworking. 4G technology is still growing, and it will continue to grow, I think, for the next couple of years. But obviously, 5G will start to eclipse that growth. But there's really a need to support 4G and 5G seamless interworking as we move forward. So those are kind of some of the trends that I see. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen to kind of give us his thoughts and kind of tell me where I probably messed up as well. So go ahead, Stephen.
Bit of a delay there. Thank you very much for that. Okay, well, but just before we jump into the meat of the presentation, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about our own convergence journey that we've been on. Obviously, charging convergence, payments, consumer enterprise, network, fixed cable, mobile, retail, wholesale. All the charging gurus on the line here will understand all of those ones. Well, we've been on our own journey here in Amdocs, converging our charging systems because, as I mentioned, we joined Amdocs, the OpenNet catalog joined the Amdocs portfolio back in August 2020. And it was a couple of months later that myself and Nasser, who has been leading up the turbocharging, we got acquainted and we got together. And supported with our PDM teams, we presented back and forth to each other on our architectures and our functionality, the charging flows that we supported, etc., etc. But what came to the fore very quickly was we were facing the exact same challenges, getting ready for cloud deployments, 5G readiness, scalability, observability, operability, all the abilities, the open source adoption, security concerns. All of these were the exact same concerns or challenges that we were facing. And when we got together, we realized that there was real synergy in the way that we were developing. Obviously, the fundamentals that underpinned were being developed in the same way, microservices driven, cloud native, the API first. All of these design ethos were very, very similar. So then we had to get together. Over the last couple of years, we've been very busy looking at what it takes to produce a unified charging solution and bring it to the market. And Amdocs revenue management superset, if you will. How do we take that leap forward? So at the end of this 2-year now activities, where we have a proper agreement now in place for a consolidated and unified charging product that we're ready to bring to the market. Federation of the data models has been agreed, and together now we're very happy to launch our new branding, of course. We have the marketing guys on the call here, Amdocs Charging. So 2 years now, why now, I suppose, is confusion has been paramount, has been every time we talk to analysts, every time we talk to our customers, they're questioning what's going on, and you're running two different products. And it's important to note at this stage, we still have a Vault charging seat, we still have turbocharging. Those products have the roadmaps. We have our own customers that are running on those, and I'll talk a little bit about that on the next slide. The roadmap is clear on where we're doing, but what we have now is a central conduit for the roadmap, a central build, it's a single product build that is taking a good leap forward now. It's important as well to note that the transition to the central line, the Amdocs charging line that we have here, it will be supported and is supported by productized upgrade tooling as well. And it's when and if it makes sense for the ECS and TC customers to transition across on Amdocs charging. But for the market, going to the market, when you're looking for a new product from Amdocs, it's Amdocs charging that you'll be getting. And it's, has all the benefits of being integrated across the full CES portfolio, driven by standards, has a rapid cadence design ethos, all of the typical stuff that you would expect from Amdocs. So that's the Amdocs charging story, I suppose, convergence story. I just wanted to click onto that one before we jumped in. Okay. Is that slide changing for me now? I think it is. Okay, so we normally present these type of slides at the end of the deck, but I thought it was good to throw it up here at the front because it does demonstrate that we really are truly a successful product, charging product company, and we're very much global. And it's important for product management, and I'm sure that's with product management in the past, very focused on customer success and fueling their individual lines of business. We have massive customers that we deliver to: AT&T, Vodafone Group, Rogers, A1, and that's just naming a few. But this entire list that you see in front of us here now are the ones that are driving our roadmap of deliverables. These are the ones that are pushing us and driving us. We like to think that we have the best product in the market, and we possibly do. But what makes that great is not our smarts, not how clever we are. I always say, no, it's because of our customers who drive us really hard. These are the innovators. These are the creative ones. These are the ones that are demanding. And it's our ability to react and deliver to these customers that are driving that roadmap, driving those deliverables, especially around the 5G evolution that's happening in the market right now. You might see here as we list through all the different lines of business that is to be supported, and typically these can be, and definitely in legacy deployments, diametrically opposed. However, right now, as we look across the asset base that we have, both from an IT perspective, where the turbocharging has been extremely powerful in the past, and obviously it still does all the real-time and OpenNet in the past, has played on both sides of things, but has been focused very much on the network side. This now convergence into, and it's a really exciting one for a product manager to be involved, a really cool one to be involved in, and that convergence of all the different lines of business into a single point, a single charging system, being able to cater for, it doesn't matter what area of the business that we're catering to. So this is our customer base. Let me jump on to the next one. Maybe the transition will be a little bit better than last time. Whoops, nope, too far. So slide 3, this is all about the 3GPP standards, and it's no surprise that Amdocs are heavily plugged into the standards evolution, together with many of our customers, to work out exactly what is needed within these standards, especially in a multi-vendor ecosystem, for them all to work together and to drive all the different use cases that are coming out of the 5G ecosystem. There's a huge variety and diversity of different types of service providers that are being serviced by these, so they're still very wide open for interpretation on how we can service these. The new 5G assets or ingredients, or I think our marketing guys call them the currencies, go far beyond the typical way that we managed charging before in the past, looking at usage monitoring and making decisions based on that and the customer activities. It's now, latencies, speed, coverage and density combinations, SLA and performance metrics, location applications. You have the platform itself, network slicing, or even at the moment, one of our customers we're talking about on a per API call basis. Beyond that, then there are multiple different partners that are getting involved in the actual charging process with revenue shares, B2B to X, etc., that are all need to be service stuff. What this is showing is right now is that it's a real opportunity for our customers to start interworking with new partners, the enterprises. And these guys, and especially with R16, R17 being rolled out now, these guys are really taking stock and increasing their demands on service providers as they look to see what these, the enhanced MBB, the ultra reliable low latency call, all of these value adds that are coming out and evolving, and all the different use cases around it. What can they do and how can they capitalize on that investment? And they're driving the operators to really start investing. But I suppose, what does this mean for our charging customers? For the ones that I've been talking to at the moment, they're starting quite small. They're working with individual enterprises, and they have bespoke sort of agreements that are being drawn up and drafted up in the legacy way, but preparing for the expansion of what will come, because ultimately that way of working will not be fit for the future. I suppose if we think about the service providers right now, they are monitoring the standards, and for us as vendors, we're very focused on the 5G area, but from their perspective, they're mostly focused on the myriad of concerns, including the move to cloud and all aspects of the convergence that are requirements. One area of interest specific to me, I'm very into the commercial perspective, is around the edge ecosystem. It's a really interesting one to tease through. End users just want their service, as always. They want it now, they want it on demand, and they want a price that's value-based, and it ultimately delivers on what they're asking for. The operator themselves then, they have to deliver the connectivity and the quals to make sure that the service can be delivered. But then we have a couple of new areas, the edge computing service provider, and that could be the operator, or it might be another party. And these are looking at the infrastructure provider, provisioning, the SLA definitions, and all aspects of managing all the applications that will sit on top. And then the fourth player in this one then is the application provider themselves, who are looking after the customer experience, the subscription. Well, they're very focused on the customer experience, not necessarily in delivering it out to the end user, but the subscriptions and making sure that the customer is bought into buying into the longevity of the service that they're providing. So it's a very dynamic situation around an edge, putting stuff and charging out in the corner and all. It's quite an interesting development area that's happening right now. And our customers and are now starting to invest in this particular area. But this ecosystem starting to get better. So thinking about our customers themselves, I'm going to hand over to Nasur now to talk about, from their perspective, what are the key drivers?
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. So yes, in terms of charging domain, when we try to look at the top 3 focus areas of our customers, we always find these 3 that are since 3 years ago, and we believe that will continue for the next 3 or 5 years. So moving to the cloud, expanding to 5G, and looking for more conversions are the main focus areas that CSPs are looking at when it comes to their charging system. So first, all of them want to move their charging to the cloud, being either private cloud or public cloud, but cloud native is the key word here. So leveraging all the flexibility that cloud native provides, DevOps, all the modularity coming with microservices, with Kubernetes. So, and also looking for more automation, more elasticity to reduce cost of operation, and also to be able to handle unpredictable traffic that will come from adopting new 5G use cases. So security is a very important aspect in moving to the cloud, especially for the public cloud. So deploying CSP assets in public cloud exposes to a lot of security threats, and this touches many levels, so including data at rest that need to be protected, encrypted, data in transit that also needs very strict encryption, and also protecting personal information from both external access and also access of unauthorized people to it. The second is obviously 5G. So 5G is the new core network, new generation that will enable most of the new use cases. So adopting release 16, release 17, and soon will be release 18, now under development in 3GPP, and especially adopting the edge computing paradigm with the new business models that it offers, and also slicing and private networking. The third point, very important, is customers are looking for the convergence of charging. So they don't want anymore to have a lot of silos dealing with different lines of business, different access technologies. So fixed 3G, 4G, 5G, IoT, prepaid, postpaid, are all looked at as being converging into the same charging system, like a supercharging system that allows them to have all the capability together. So if we look at moving to the cloud, what it means in terms of impact in the CSP daily work, so we see a major impact, and that upskilling and upskilling of people working in the CSP are required because of a lot of new factors. So first of all, the cloud native technology comes with a lot of new aspects related to the way to manage the system, to deploy, to configure, etc. So compared to the legacy monolith, it's all new technology that need to be learned, and people need to be trained for it. There are a lot of network changes, mainly when the system is deployed in public cloud, in AWS, Microsoft Azure, or others. So there are a lot of VPN technology, load balancing technologies that need to be taken into account. Also design patterns, microservice, domain-driven design, and also deployments, considering orchestrators, Kubernetes, etc., are new and need to be mastered by the people operating them. And then elasticity and scalability in these domains is also extremely agile and requires a lot of new understandings and practices. So if we look now in terms of expanding to 5G, what this means, where the main focus should be, as said before, edge computing is an important aspect to the moving to the 5G. It provides, it offers the multi-sided business model where many actors are involved in delivering services to the end user. This includes the communication service provider, the application service provider, and in some cases, an external edge cloud service provider, and then considers very low latency and latency sensitive applications and ultra-reliable application that deliver a totally different experience to the end user. So those are multi-sided models which are new and which are based on new technologies, including edge cloud technology, that needs a very special focus on them. So the second part is the slicing and the private enterprise network. Definitely this is a B2B type of services where the way services are charged is not anymore based on the data session of the end user, but more on other metrics which are related to the life cycle management events of the network slice or the private network, to all the performance indicators. This includes latency, overall bandwidth, number of simultaneous people attached to the network, etc., and to many other analytics information that are feeding machine learning and artificial intelligence applications that will provide very intelligent way of charging the slices and private networks. The third one is other paradigms of monetization. So beyond the connectivity and the bandwidth, so new business models, as I mentioned, the multi-sided B2B2X, but also quality of service-based monetization. So this is in the area of SLA-based charging. So being able to do charging in real time based on the quality of experience, which is observed by the end user, serving new 5G verticals. So with all the specificity of the different industries that may have a lot of new models that needs very specific charging rules. And then location and mobility-based charging. As we know in 5G, mobility is also driven by policy, and then also for IoT, access to the network and mobility events can be charging without even data exchanged between the IoT devices. So what we did in Amdocs in terms of convergence, so Stephen talked about the convergence of the lines of business, the different access technologies, 3G, 4G, 5G, the different payment methods, prepaid, postpaid, etc. And in addition to that, we did another convergence that Stephen introduced in the beginning, which is converging Amdocs charging, also known as turbocharging, together with OpenNet ECS into a single charging system now called Amdocs Charging. And within this, we in fact combined a set of capabilities which are different, even if both charging systems are serving the same domain. Both are serving it from different angles. So turbocharging is known to be leading in postpaid, IT-led, and handles very large-scale postpaid systems based on very capable catalog that goes beyond charging. And we have OpenNet, which comes with all the network pedigree, the 5G value plan, including NEF and NWDAF, and then the combined policy and charging under the same platform with real-time charging for prepaid data plans and wallets. So all those capabilities are merged together in a single charging system, Amdocs Charging. And for efficiency and also for optimization of our investment, they are sharing a list of common infrastructure items, this including the MS360, which is our cloud-native platform, sharing the same catalog, converged catalog, same microservice framework, regardless the origin of the microservice, all based on API first across all the portfolio, allow them to integrate and to have a synergy with other Amdocs products. 5G value plan is available for this charging system for extended charging capability with exposure and NWDAF, and then enjoying the same CI/CD and rapid cadence framework for the evolution and the rapid upgrades of the deployments in the live system. So thank you. Now I can hand over to Jim. Jim, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nasser. So Nasser and Stephen, thank you. Interesting presentation. We're going to talk a little bit more about kind of the implications from a charging perspective after in the second part of the presentation. But as I said, we wanted to stop here and take a pause and ask the audience, get you to provide us some of your thoughts here. So what we wanted to, the poll question for the audience today is, what do you consider the greatest 5G charging challenge? Is it cloud and flexibility shortcomings in general? Is it meeting new edge charging requirements? Is it managing 4G and 5G requirements in parallel? Is it a greater focus on RAN and 5G core investment? Or is it limited market for 5G monetizable enterprise and consumer services? So if I can ask you, the audience, if you can provide us your input, that would be really helpful. So Stephen and Nasser, while we are waiting, you both kind of talked about B2B to X. And that's, to me, is, I think it's known in the industry, but to me, I think the implications of B2B2X are quite profound from a charging perspective. And I see that as something that has obviously charging requirements associated with it as well. But are you starting to see kind of impacts from your customers starting to understand that, that they can extend their services in an enterprise context using B2B2X? Is that something that you're already starting to see your customers looking at? And Stephen and Nasser, either one can jump in here.
So, Nasser, will I lead and you can join in? So,
okay.
So the conversation we're having with our customer, I think I mentioned a little bit earlier on, they're very much at the start of it. Experimentation with enterprises that they're comfortable with, already have a pre-existing relationship with. And as they're the ones that they're starting to tease through. We have, for instance, a V2X operator, a customer of our customer. That's one of the use cases that we are involved in now. But like that, as I say, this is a massive sort of engagement where there's pre-existing relationships, there's revenue share models, there's that are negotiated, and it's just a little bit different. But they are ramping up very quickly. They have to have automation in place. They have to have automation of onboarding of the partners. They have to be able to expose a marketplace of features and functionality that they can share with their customer base, their new partners into this ecosystem, as well as all the automation around the monetization and the managing of all the charging flows that needs to be managed as well within that one. So I would say it's very much in proof of concept phase for the big ones, as in the volume of new enterprises that will be getting involved. And at the moment, it's very much on a much smaller, more manual basis as I see it today. Over to yourself, Nasser. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think that mainly the large operators are very serious about the use cases of B2B2X. We saw a lot of proof of concepts, for example, including entertainment events, like, for example, stadiums, etc., where all these multi-sided business models become very relevant, and including the technology underlying, which is the edge computing and the network slicing. Okay? So for the large operators, we see real proof of concept of real life use cases, and we see even going to the business level of defining offers with the pricing of these offers, with the subscription model, etc. So yes, there is an adoption of these new technologies for the B2B model that we see very relevant. For the small ones, we see that they are very interested to hear about what type of use cases. We see many of them sitting in the follower, taking the follower seat, okay? And trying to see what happened with the large ones. But we have the evidence that there is a penetration, at least for proof of concept level.
Okay, perfect. Okay, great. Thank you for that. I think it clarifies that a lot from my perspective. So let's see what the audience said. Okay, let's see. The number one response is limited market for 5G monetized enterprise and consumer services, 36%, 31% meeting new edge charging requirements, 31%, and then 15% said cloud and flexibility shortcomings in general. And then greater focus on RAN and 5G core, 10%, and 8%, 7.7%, 8% managing 4G and 5G requirements. So kind of a mixed bag here from my perspective. I think the good news is that managing 4G and 5G charging in parallel is low, which I think is kind of a positive thing. Obviously, we're doing this webinar to really help service providers understand how to monetize services. So 36%, that the largest group sees that it's a limited market right now. And then we just talked about new business models. It's obviously we're in a very changing world. And I think this kind of gets reflected in this audience input. But Stephen or Nasser, what are your thoughts here from?
Just a comment here. I think we're very lucky in Amdocs in that we're exposed to the earliest of adopters in the marketplace, and these are the ones that we're involved in. For instance, edge charging, we're working with one particular customer on a proof of concept and right sizing charging and monetization capabilities on the edge as small marbles to be able to deliver the features and functionality that you can have. Now you still have the centralized charging, but right sizing on the edge. So they're things that we're involved in. I think the view there, limited market around 5G monetizable enterprise use cases at the moment, or services. This is just at the outset. It's the proof of concepts that are happening, and we're involved with multiples at the moment, and it's those that will drive the evolution. These are the smart guys. These are the guys that are driving us hard, but they're shaping how this will evolve in the future, and what ones will be palatable, what ones will be innovative and creative. Because ultimately, it's getting that innovation into the hands of the enterprises. Because there's no way in hell a charging vendor or an operator, if we're honest, is going to come up with all the killer 5G use cases. They need the innovative enterprises, and it's about fueling them with the flexibility and abilities to be able to deliver on the services.
Yeah, that's fair, and that's fair. Just to close the B2B2X discussion, a couple of years ago we never heard of B2B2X, so that's kind of evolved because enterprises are saying now there's a new business opportunity for me. So you're absolutely right. So the enterprises, in some respect, will look at what can we add value to our existing customers, or how can we customize services. So that's great. Nasser, do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, the picture I see is perfectly reflecting, what we also see happening with our customers and in the market in general. However, I have one comment about managing 4G and 5G charging requirements in parallel, which is the smallest one here, 7%. So probably from business point of view, that makes sense, that number. But from non-functional and technical point of view, this is a very hot topic for all the CSPs introducing 5G. So all the handovers between 4G and 5G, people leaving the city, which is well covered by 5G, and going back home with less coverage creates a lot of overload in terms of events that come to the charging system. So those things that we didn't saw in the past, because the way 5G is deployed, it's a millimeter wave, and very small cells are deployed there, so it takes time. And with also the NSA, so the non-standalone deployment ongoing, so we see a lot in the first deployments of 5G core. We saw a lot of handover between 4G radio to 5G radio that needs to be taken into account by the CSP to handle the load in one hand, and also for the user experience, okay, that need to be very smooth, and the sessions which are on 5G need to hand over smoothly to 4G. So this is, we saw as, in practice, when we go to the field, as an important item from technical point of view.
Fair enough. Okay. Thank you both for the insights on this. And thank you, the audience, for providing the input as well and giving us your views. I think it's pretty foundational. So let's move on to the next slide, and I'll turn it over to Stephen for this.
Thanks very much, Jim. Just before we go on, I think an interesting one that we mentioned earlier, I didn't want to interrupt Nasser, was around the cloud adoption for the operators, and it's something that I've seen because we've been engaging with multiple different, I suppose from a maturity perspective, operators. Some have been ready to go and driving and chomping at the bit. Others have been, haven't even chosen their container management solution when they start the engagement with us, and we can typically be the first one that they're putting into a cloud ecosystem. One learning that I'd like to share is and we've seen this with some of our customers, early investment is the absolute key, training and tooling adoption, to make sure that the operators themselves are ready from a business perspective, how to prepare for the cloud, and ultimately being able to leveraging the charging asset that they're buying from Amdocs. And we've seen some operators completely swing from asking very basic questions of understanding to following an educational program within their organization, being able to really capitalize on the investment that they're making. And DevOps being a key adoption or criteria that we see where they're making the big one. Now, getting back to this slide, right? So it's very naive of me to think that the solutions that I work in, the charging solution, is the center of not only my universe, but the center of the ecosystem within which we operate. But look, hear me out first. Let's think about how things were or possibly still are. Some and most things were managed in real time, but historically the charging node can sometimes be a bit of an afterthought when people are putting together these campaigns and offerings out in the market, and records are just being produced in lots of different places across the network, and then they're being pulled together in a little bit of post-processing. If we look into the future now, beyond the monetizing legacy ecosystem to be there, the new 5G ecosystem, there's a diversity of currencies, as I mentioned earlier on, and the way that charging now has to be the focal point because of the divergence of all of those different currencies and where they can crop up across all the different network functions. So charging is typically being very disjointed in the 3G and 4G system, but 5G now we have the opportunity to consolidate and do away with all those silos that have grown up and centralize the intelligence, because it does need to be hit frequently as part of delivering those services out into your enterprise, as we talked about. So if you buy a new charging product and you want to optimize and leverage that investment, what do you need to do? So you have to go on your own journey of consolidation and transformation. And that, these high-risk transformation programs, we're not saying that that's the way to do, but focusing on the money, that's what charging is all about. So focusing on the money, revenue management is never a bad thing. And so if you focus on the flows of the money and where the highest value is, then you know the transformation program that you need to do to consolidate and centralize your charging system. So money is a powerful motivator, but it's 5G success is not the only thing to focus on. You've got to simplify the legacy. And I'd start then basically with whether you start with enterprises, first of all, or you go with consumer. That's one that we've seen some of our customers have taken on as well. And have got the best benefits from. But again, looking at the value to their business and their consolidation and the cost that they had to work on. So being a central point of the truth. So you do not have disparate information over multiple different revenue management solutions, but having that single point to go to and moving away from an ad hoc, no one knows where the right information is, and worse, where you have conflicting pieces of information across your ecosystem. So a single centralized CHF in all cases is the best way. So, and I think the complexity and diversity of the service mixes and consumption models that are going to be coupled with the 5G evolution that are coming means that this type of strategy is one that's key to adopt for all of our customers. Okay. And then we have our nice little wrap-up slide, which is the why Amdocs charging. This is a nice little way, and it's just to regurgitate some of the key messages that we discussed earlier on in the webinar. So a single convergent chat platform, it doesn't matter what type of network that you're plugged into, you want to be catering for, and everybody's interested in talking about the 5G opportunity that exists. And indeed, the monetization opportunity is vast when we look at 5G, or at least that's the story that we're being told. But we have to equally think about the consolidation of the other Gs, the 3Gs, the 4Gs, and even the 2Gs, and trying to bring them all together and make them work together in a unified, holistic manner. Cloud-wise, I know we talked a little bit about getting ready for the cloud and all aspects, and how cloud readiness is fundamentally and intrinsically entwined with the value that you will extract from your charging system, your charging investment. So being able to cater to, and a lot of our customers are going with their own private cloud, but we have several that have gone to the public cloud, and even some that have done hybrids and different parts of the charging system deployed in different areas. So all aspect of grabbing the cloud. and then totally integrated with other 5G value planes. So this is our portfolio of offering. So we do have 4 network functions that we offer up, and we believe these 4, which are the policy brain, the charging, treasury, and we have the network exposure function, which is enabling you to partner up and more successfully with your customers, and then all aspects of managing the data in an intelligent and AI fashion is delivered through our NWDAF solution. So those 4 value plane components come together to help you capture the opportunity that 5G offers up to you. And then, as I mentioned earlier, our best asset, and that's our customers. These are the guys that are driving us as hard and are driving product management to react to demands, to their demands, and getting involved with the earliest adopters is the best way for us to drive on that one too. Okay, I'll hand you back to yourself now, Jim. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Stephen. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up there, and we're going to get to questions, Q&A. But while we get into the Q&A, just first of all, I'd like to thank Stephen and Nasser for presentations, and again, thank you to the audience for the poll insights. So there's a slide out here where you can get more information on Amdocs products, but also wanted to just, as the operator said at the beginning of today's session for the audience, there is a survey link in your interface on the web, the attendee interface. If you can provide us input in today's session, that would help us to plan for future sessions. So we did get some questions that were coming in here as well. Maybe I'll start off with one, and this one, maybe Stephen, it was interesting, you just talked about it. The network exposure function and the NWDAF, those are obviously key parts of all of this from a 5G core perspective. And I see NWDAF as having a lot of implications, being able to use analytics in new ways, and network exposure is important because I think it'll drive new services, which hopefully can be monetized and maybe in a B2B2X model. But are some of your customers now starting to understand kind of the power of NWDAF and the network exposure function?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I think it's the new sexy area for our customers. They're the ones, that's what they always want to talk about, and they're deep into the experimentation. Obviously, the NWDAF and the NEF are relatively new within our portfolio, and it is a big divergence from us. Our core has always been mediation, charging, and policy, but we see these components as huge, big value adds. And we get under the hood of what NWDAF is. It's an engine around catering to vast quantities of data transiting across the network, which we've been managing for decades now, and making decisions on the back of that. Now, obviously, we've added in a little bit more maturity now with our AI capability within the Amdocs actually portfolio, and being able to build on that one. And the experimentation that we're seeing at the moment with our customer base is very much one where they are playing with a group of new toys. They are, as a very animated, very engaged, and it's quite innovative to some of the solutions that there are, some of the ideas that they're coming up with, and what the data means and how they can react to it in real time. Ultimately, at the moment, they're primarily being driven around service assurance, protecting the network, ensuring that they can deliver SLAs, etc. And that's kind of the planning that they're primarily focused on right now.
Yeah, interesting point. And it's a bit controversial, but I think in the long term, the NWDAF could even have some security implications as well. I mean, they were designed for that, but as we move to this part of this AI policy for security, the NWDAF will play an important role. Okay. Let me go through another question here. Okay, there's some interesting questions here. One is, and maybe it's tied to what we just talked about, enterprise and B2B2X. It's how will enterprise, I'll just kind of paraphrase it, how will enterprise charging differ or change, and what are the implications for service providers? So Stephen or Nasser, who wants to take a shot at that one?
Do you want to have a crack at that one, Nasser, or will I jump in again?
you can start, Stephen.
Okay, so the primary drivers here, and I talked a little bit about earlier, is the multiple parties now that are involved in the single revenue stream. From a user perspective, they just want to buy a service, but then you have the infrastructure providers, you have the application providers, you have the service providers, and you even have maybe ourselves or maybe a software as a service operators. So the application guy, there's so many people that are involved in delivering of the service, it starts to become a monetization nightmare from an operator's perspective. So they need a way to manage the complexities associated with that. So that's the B2B to X primarily that I'm focusing on there, is around the revenue streams and making sure that the value add from all the different parties is being managed and being accounted for. On the B2B side, maybe Nasser, I'll get you to bring in here.
Yeah, I think what is new in 5G with the B2B is that in the previous generations, so 3G, 4G, most of the B2B services were in reality consumer services, so voice, data, and SMS that are packaged differently to enterprise. So, following the enterprise structure, organization, etc., with pooling, sharing, and some advanced capabilities, but this is still on top of the main services which are offered to the end user. Now with 5G, we have two main aspects. One, which is the performance and the management from a CSP, is something which is applicable only to enterprise, not to end users. It's a new way of buying services to own employees or to other subscribers of the enterprise, which is B2B to C model. So this is totally new because technically also in charging, the events that need to be charged, they don't come from the network itself, but they come from the management domain and the performance domain. Okay? And this is opening the door for very innovative kind of use cases for the enterprise. The second item, which is open also to the B2B domain and B2B2C, is the multi-sided business model, where you have an application provider, which is generally a partner of the CSP. And then this partner can have own subscribers. And with the edge computing that will offer only through the CSP assets, the very low latency and extremely high bandwidth to the end user, the combination of those different players is totally new. We didn't saw this in 4G, despite of many attempts to go there. 5G is really enabling this, and it is again in the B2B area. So we see a real shift in to B2B with the 5G capabilities. NEF and NWDAF are very important enablers for this new type of models. So they provide the access to the third parties, which are playing an important role in multi-sided model, to have access to a lot of network capabilities that they couldn't have access in the past, and also enables this application with insights in terms of network performance indicators that are extremely rich and allow a lot of innovations for the application itself. All this is directed definitely to the enterprise domain, which is we see growing a lot in 5G.
Yeah, interesting. So yeah, go ahead.
So, sorry, just to build on that one, is an interesting one around the B2B that we've been coming across, and perhaps is a little bit different. Before, we've been very good at fueling transparency on charges, etc., out to the consumer base, and being able to produce notifications, etc., and updates as they're consuming services. And the enterprises now is a nice little sort of use case that I've seen is one where there's a credit back situation whereby if you're not delivering your service on a specific SLA or performance, it's just not being delivered, that based on the back of that there is a credit style system or a no charge type system to the services that aren't being delivered. And I thought that was a nice one that the B2Bs are starting to get involved in, or at least being offered. So transparency on a B2B level to make sure that should the operators have some challenges on the network side and SLAs are dipping, then the network assets, etc., ultimately there's a willingness to ensure that there is total transparency on the charges and to make sure no additional charges are happening at that stage.
Okay, and you both raised some interesting points. I think one of the key takeaways for me that I hadn't really considered on the same level as you've always thought it through is that it's not just charging, converged charging, the network exposure in WDAP, AI. It's also with that monetization is kind of a shift in models as well, moving away, as you said, from consumer to enterprise. And I think enterprise charging services kind of took a step forward, even going back 8 years ago with NFV, being able to virtualize enterprise services, I think had a big step. And I think this is kind of building on that in terms of what we're doing with the cloud and 5G. But I guess there's a question here about what sort of timeline will it take for enterprises to kind of, even build more on kind of the business model than consumer, because obviously that should be, offer greater monetizable opportunities as well. Is that something that's happening now, or it'll take 5 years? Any sort of thoughts on that?
I don't know whether I have a solid prediction on this one. I think it's going to be very dependent on the enterprise. Obviously, we got the big ones like the V2X, the General Motors, and the German makers, all that sort of stuff. These are embracing it and getting stuck into it as quickly as possible. But the innovation on the enterprise level, I think it'll be a slow starter and it'll grow exponentially. Timeline-wise, I'm going to hand you to Nasser, who's going to do a great prediction. Thanks, Nasser.
Well, maybe before we hand it to Nasser, maybe is it just fair to say that we've seen the shift starting to occur from consumer to enterprise? Is that a fair statement?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And the rate is relatively fast in the early adopters. These guys are getting stuck in, but there's a lot of followers that are yet to get their teeth into it. That's my personal experience at the moment. But Nasser, perhaps across the turbocharging customer base, are they a little bit more beyond POCs?
Yes, I think in terms of timeline, I think we can say that it already started and it's already in production when we talk, for example, about connected car enterprises. So we have even connected car providers with global coverage. Okay? So which are an enterprise delivering services to their end users. So this is a B2B2C using the connectivity and other services, including authentication, etc., and the IoT communication of the CSP. Okay, so adopting these new models of B2B2C by the enterprise is something that has already started. And with the enterprises getting acquainted with the new enablers that 5G is bringing, let's don't forget that 5G SA rollout only started last year, so there are only few CSPs with 5G core, and this year we will have a little bit more, but we are in the very early days of the 5G core deployment, by which network slicing charging will come and edge computing charging will come. And with that moment, we will see enterprises measuring the benefit of these capabilities, and will follow the example of the connected car. So we'll see other industries. So we know this in POCs, in proof of concepts, And we think that around 2 years after a good coverage in terms of deployment of 5G SA, 5G core, we will have a bunch of industries which are using these capabilities as B2B capability.
Okay, excellent. So there's a question here I wanted to get to about satellite as well. Obviously, we don't have time to get to that, but there's some really interesting questions that we didn't get to, so we may respond to via email after the show. But first of all, really interesting session. So Nasser and Stephen, thank you. I'd like to thank Amdocs for sponsoring the session. I think it provided the audience a lot of insights into sort of the complexity and the opportunities and the challenges, but obviously it's clear that 5G will be, there's going to be a very important role of charging in 5G to monetize services. And I'd also like to thank the audience for attending today's session and for providing input into our poll questions. So for light reading, this is Jim Hodges. Thanks again to our sponsor, Amdocs, for today's session, and for Stephen and Nasser for presenting. So, and to you, the audience, thank you for attending, and we hope to see you at future sessions. Thank you.